was of Vaishnava devotional spirituality as inspired by Krishna Chaitanya or simply Chaitanya, 1486 to 1533. Analogous in some respects to Dante's Paradiso and more closely akin to John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, it depicts not one but two parallel spiritual odysseys. The first is of Narada, the paradigm of the devout Vaishnava saint sage. The other is of Gopakumar, a simple lad in search of God. The former travels across India and into heavenly realms in search of those devotees, human or divine, to whom God Krishna has been most merciful. In the course of his quest, Narad encounters ever more profound and dedicated embodiments of devotion, bhakti, to Krishna. Each of these differentially redirects him to others, yet more devout and yet more favored by Krishna than themselves. The dialogues en route, subtly interpreted in an extensive auto commentary, are so designed as to instruct, edify, and inspire devout readers or listeners. The lad Gopakumar likewise provides the occasion for progressive spiritual discovery as one follows his pilgrimage from one realm to another in search of ever more sublime and quintessential manifestations of the divine. Narada's search culminates in the paradoxal revelation that the devotees most favored by Krishna, those whose devotion to him is most perfect and intense, are gopis, simple, though divine, cowherd girls who are in torment when their beloved Krishna is absent from them. Gopakumara's quest leads to the discovery that God Krishna reveals himself most perfectly in the idyllic heavenly realm of Gokul and in the terrestrial Vrindavan, where he sports eternally as youthful lover as the gopis and playmate of the cowherd boys. Within the framework of this dual spiritual odyssey and an extensive commentary, Dig Darshini, the 16th century author Sanatan Goswami, analyzes with delicate nuances and orchestrates in masterly fashion the theology cum psychology of loving devotion, prema bhakti, to Krishna as epitomized by Chaitanya. To readers already familiar with the Puranic Hindu pantheon and imagery and appreciative of the Vaishnav commitment to Prema Bhakti to God Krishna, the luxuriant transcendental senses and unrestrained displays of aesthetic devotion need not seem exotic. But the vividness and novelty of many vignettes and the poignant emotional vulnerability of Krishna may evoke surprise and wonder even among seasoned Vaishnava devotees. If, of course, one does not see the point of what Sanatan is doing, one need not read on. But even the reader new to cosmology, mythology, and theology of Vaishnav devotion, if reasonably patient and attentive, may find in the Brihad Bhagvatamrta, the Dig Darshini, a remarkably incisive, consistent, and revealing exploration of human spirituality and religious psychology. For Vaishnava devotee in the tradition of Chaitanya, Brihad Bhagavatamrita and its commentary constitutes a foundational text of great value. Sanatan Goswami was the most senior of the authoritative scholar devotees deputed by Chaitanya to formulate the appropriate theology of Prema Bhakti to Krishna. Sanatan's poetic narrative, supplemented by its commentary, is the most thorough and penetrating statement of his theological ideas and spiritual sensibilities. Significantly, I think this, his most ambitious work, takes the form of narrative and dialogue. Though the Brihad Bhagvatamrta is carefully structured in its organization, it is dramatic and imaginative in its overt form. Though based on the Srimad Bhagavat Puran, of which it aspires to express the essence or nectar, Amrit, it is not in the form of a commentary as such. It is itself a Puranic like tale, which, though composed by Sanatan, is told as if an ancient discourse by King Parikshit to his mother Uttara. Like a Puran, it presents exemplary personages, memorable incidents, and striking imagery. All of his this serves to nourish the reflection and meditation. That is, the smarana, lit remembering of devout readers and hearers. The content of the text is words, but these are picture words rather than book words. They evoke the experiential basis upon which secondary theoretical and practical elaboration may be built. By expressing his own conception of loving devotion to God in the form of the dual Odysseys of Narada and Gopakumar, Sanatan was in effect endorsing literary narrative of a poetic and dramatic sort as a preferred means for passing on to subsequent generations the crucial experience, anubhuti of loving devotion. For devotees of Krishna in the modern world who are not fluent in Sanskrit, access to Sanatan's foundational poem must be by translations or paraphrase. There are several in Bengali and Hindi and perhaps in some other Indian languages. In English, there is a translation of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita by Shriman Bhakti Paranjan, Prajanan Yati Maharaj from the Sri Gauriya Madras, but none, so far as I know, of the Digdarshini. The present edition includes translations by Gopi Pranadhan Das of both the basic poem and its commentary, plus appendixes, glossaries, etc. This is an extraordinary labor of love. The Brihad Bhagavad Amrita alone consists some 2500 Sanskrit verses, each requiring painstaking care when one wisely being rendered into idiomatic English prose than rather than metrical verse. The commentary is considerably longer, and although in Sanskrit, prose is far from easy to convey in readable, accurate English. Yet the task has been done and done well, an impressive achievement indeed. When I began to examine the proofs for this book, I was pleased to find that Gopi Parandhan Das's English prose version reads clearly and crisply. Moreover, it conveys the excitement, wonder, and devotion of spiritual discovery that animates Sanatan's own composition. The more I read, the more fascinated I become with Sanatan's novel and brilliant retelling of themes emanating from the Srimad Bhagavat, but developed into much that is not found explicitly in that revered text. Depictions of progressively more intense and intimate modes of loving devotion build to a climax in the remarkable portrayal of Krishna at Dwaraka. depressed and anguished in absence from Radha and the gopis, and restored to normal consciousness only by an artful ruse. The further I read, the less was I conscious that I was reading a translation. So naturally, one does one unit of the narrative flow into the next. When I did shift to the task of comparing portions of the translations with the Sanskrit, I was pleased to discover that the English prose is indeed very faithful to the Sanskrit original. One might quibble over the choice of certain idiomatic English phrases, but even these convey the basic sense. From the literal meaning of the original, little is left out and very little is added in the passage from the Sanskrit to English. Inevitably, of course, some reasonable resonance is lost in any translation from poetic verse to prose translation. But fortunately, because the Brihad Bhagvatamrta is mostly narrative and dialogue, it lends itself more readily to prose rendering than would other types of poetic verse. I would like to think that Sanatan Goswami would welcome his modern prose translator as a kindred spirit and an able expositor of his work. The Digdarshini being itself prose, but prose in the peculiar form of Sanskrit textual commentary presents the translator with a different set of challenges. In size, it is twice the length of the document which it interprets. In form and function, it resembles the complex footnotes of modern scholarships. In orientation, it assumes broadly ranging acquaintance with traditional Vaishnava themes, Sanskrit religious literature, and technical points of devotional aesthetics, theology, and philosophy. Faced with such challenges, many a translator, and if not he or she, then the publisher, would resort to a paraphrase that drastically cuts down the size and simplifies the scholarship of the commentary and perhaps introduces an ascetics, ideological, or rhetorical interpretation in place of the more demanding and sophisticated orientation of the author. Not so the present translator and publisher, but Gopi Parandhan Das and the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust are to be commended for representing Sanatan's auto commentary as it is in all its bulk and sophistication. The Brihad Bhagavatamrita and Digdarshini together comprise a classic of religious literature whose integrity ought not to be compromised. On a narrow scale, it is a classic in that it is the template for the theology and spiritual psychology that have remained authoritative for the Chaitanya Vaishnava tradition. And though till now scarcely known beyond that tradition, and those who study it, it is, or merits being so recognized, a classic on a global scale as well. Sanatan Goswami's chef de oeuvre, I have pronounced it right, is a masterful exploration grounded in Vaishnav devotional faith of human spirituality and religious psychology, for the first time being made accessible in its entirety to the English reading world. As the translator acknowledges, the English version of the Digdarshini is a paraphrase, not a line by line translation. As such, it does not replace the close reading of the Sanskrit original for scholars equipped to do one. But as the translator points out and illustrates in the appendices, the paraphrasing is largely a matter of arrangement, not of selective excision or argumentation. From the portions of Volume 1 that I have compared closely, it is evident that Gopi Pran Das had managed to
He's saying that it's augmentation. Accession is removal, augmentation is addition.
augmentation. Okay, yes, sir. And not the selection, the selective accession or augmentation. Thank you. From the portions of Volume 1 that I have compared closely, it is evident that Gopi Parandhan Das had managed to retain virtually all of the content of the original commentary, though with considerable rearrangement to facilitate reading. Were it his aim to produce rigorously literal English rendering, some of his paraphrasing of Sanatan's formulations might well have to be revisited. But all things considered, he has done an admirable job of conveying the informational content and spiritual verve of the author without bow, bowdlerizing or true trunciating in an idiom
Or
understandable,
truncating, Madhi, truncating, truncating.
truncating. Bowdle, this is bowdlerizing and truncating in an idiom understandable to patient and attentive, though not necessarily expert readers. I presume that the level attained in Volume 1 has been maintained through Volumes 2 and 3. There is a special significance to this publication over and above its making accessible to readers of English a Sanskrit classic of spiritual literature. This is the first publication by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust of a major Vaishnava theological text which disciples of the late Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada have accomplished without his immediate presence. It follows the widely disseminated versions of Bhagavad Gita in many languages and multi-volume translations of the Srimad Bhagavad Puran and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, each of which is accompanied by an elaborate commentary. These prior publications were substantially the work of Prabhupada himself, with certain of his Sanskrit trained devotees, including Gopi Pradhan Das, serving as apprentices. The appearance of the Brihad Bhagvatamrta thus marks a new phase of textual theological scholarship by members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. They have, as it were, come into their maturity as responsible for faithful transmission of Chaitanya Vaishnava tradition of Prema Bhakti, loving devotion to God Krishna. What better way to assure fidelity to the words and spirit of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his circle of immediate disciples than to enable devotees and attentive seekers to read, hear, and visualize the foundational texts of those very scholar devotees who are experienced in charismatic presence of Krishna Chaitanya himself,
Who had experienced the
who
charisma.
had experienced the charismatic presence of Krishna Chaitanya himself. I'm sorry, Prabhuji. Joseph T. O. Cornell, PhD professor,
Emeritus,
emeritus, no,
Professor Emeritus, St.
in
Michael's College,
college,
University of
University
Toronto,
of Toronto,
Research,
research
Research.
associate, Oxford Center for Vaishnav and Hindu Studies.
Okay, so you can see this is how an academic scholar has has mentioned in his foreword that this work which His Grace Gopi Paranandana Prabhu has done is a very faithful rendering of both the Brihad Bhagavatamrita and Digdarshini commentary. The Brihad Bhagavatamrita is actually a condensed version of the Bhagavatam. What happened was that Parikshit Maharaj, after he heard the Bhagavatam, he still had some time before he left this world, a few days. I mean, I don't know, a few days, a few hours, whatever. I don't recollect the exact duration. So in that time, he spoke to his mother Uttara, So this is what he spoke to his mother Uttara. That is the Brihad Bhagavatamrta. So it's the entire Bhagavatam which Parikshit Maharaj spoke for his mother. So that's the Brihad Bhagavatamrta. And then on the Brihad Bhagavatamrta, there is a commentary by Sanatan Goswami himself. Sanatan Goswami composed the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the dialogue between Parikshit Maharaj and his mother Uttara. And along with that, he also produced a commentary called Digdarshini commentary, which you can see Joseph O'Connell says is twice the size of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita itself. And yet all of this has been very faithfully presented without excision or augmentation by Gopi Parandan Prabhu. So when we read it, so we have the full text of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and as he says, these are not textual words; these are picture words, which means that it brings in a sense of experience of what is going on. So these are not, text words. He says, right? I don't know the exact expression that he used, but something to that effect. That these are picture words. He says. So and the commentary also, although it is literal, it's prose. This is Bhagavad Bhagavatamrita is a poetic, is poetic in its essence, but the commentary is prose. But nevertheless, to render everything very faithfully for the reader, it's not easy, because Sanskrit, it's not like English, or it's not like other languages. Okay, you read one sentence, you translate it as it is. Sanskrit is not written in sentence format. It is one whole paragraph, actually, a huge paragraph. That's how Sanskrit is written. So that's why Joseph O'Connell says the only things may have been rearranged for easier understanding, but nothing is lost and nothing is added. That this is being certified by a academic scholar. So we have a work of very high standard that we are reading in our sessions. Any thoughts or questions? Anandita Janamarchi.
Hare Krishna, Pranam Prabhuji, Pranam to all devotees. Prabhuji, Bhagavad Digdarshini is what is that? It contains the same text of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, or is it different?
Just like you have Srimad Bhagavatam has got a text, then you have Prabhupada's purport, which is his commentary, like that. It's an explanation of the text itself.
Okay, so originally Brihad Bhagavatamrita was written by whom?
Brihad Bhagavatamrita was spoken by Parikshit Maharaj to his mother Uttara.
Yeah, but it is written by whom? Like
Sanatan Goswami.
Okay, and Digdarshini is also written
the
by...
explanation of is the explanation of that.
And okay, that by Sanatan Goswami himself.
Himself, both are by himself, yes.
Okay.
Anyone else has any thoughts or questions on this? Any reflections?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Pranam.
yes, yes.
Prabhuji, it's so beautifully written, the foreword. Very excited to now read the book. Anyways, was excited, but now with this and the choice of words and the way he's explained that how the credibility plus explaining the flow of how it's translated by Sanatan Goswami, by explained and translated by Gopi Parandan Prabhu. So very excited, Prabhuji. Thank you uh, for taking up this book.
The physical copy of these books are available. So I would recommend that you can buy a copy as soon as you can do so. That'll be like because these are screen shared thing. But I think it is on the Bhakti Vedanta. Is it there on Vedabase? But it's on the Vedabase, which is offline. You have it, but in the Vedabase, which is online, I'm not sure if it's there or not. You can check it.
No.
Okay. And one other thing that I wanted to mention was I didn't want to, Radhakishori Mataji asked me, are you going to have class today? I said, yes. But I mean, how do they say? I didn't want to say I don't want to have a class. Actually, yeah, I mean, I do have things to do at this point in time, but I didn't want to defer by one more week. So I said, let's start it. Let's start it. So that's the idea. I thought, okay, let's just begin with it, So otherwise, it'll keep getting delayed. So I have to leave now. But we have had a good start with the introduction. And I'm sure that this will keep us, it'll whet our appetite to hear more in the next session. And I mean, I'm hoping that the next session I would be able to take for an hour and a half. Let's hope that everything works out for next Thursday. I mean, I mean, in the sense that I hope I'm still not in the middle of different things. Okay, because these are pre-assigned services which I can't do much about. I mean, in the sense that, and the pre-assigned in the sense that not for many months, it's just in the last couple of weeks, and which have all of them are which have got deadlines and things like that, So, and it's not something which I'm doing it myself. I've been assigned to do these things by Guru Maharaj and superiors. So that's what it is. So we hopefully we can have a 1.5 hour session next Thursday to make up for what I mean. You can't make up, but whatever it is, let's try. Okay. So thank you all very much for joining. We'll resume again next Thursday. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.